You're listening to Get to Know World of Warships, a podcast created by Bogsy and Synpax.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Get to Know World of Warships. I, of course, am Borla.
And I am Bogsy.
And we welcome you to this very wonderful podcast we have for you today on April Fool's Day. Now, something has happened that on any other day would have been just music to everybody's ears. But it's filling everyone with anxiety right now because it is April Fool's Day. What is it, Borla?
Everyone is asking if the announcements today are real. We got an announcement about COTS getting cash prizes, similar to the Verizon tourney cash prizes. We got a nerf to the Thunder, a nerf to the Stalingrad.
Hallelujah! Hallelujah! It's kind of incredible, isn't it? But is it a joke?
Yeah, on the official stream, they're claiming all this stuff is real. I kind of believe it's real, but it's just very strange time. Not even getting into what the nerfs actually were, but it's very strange timing for them to make the announcement today instead of yesterday or tomorrow.
It is. Now, I actually don't know this, and I'm going to research this right now, but is April Fool's Day, ticka ticka ticka, you can hear my keys, is April Fool's Day just an American thing?
I don't think so. I think it has roots much deeper in superstition and other stuff. I think it's European.
Oh.
I didn't look it up, but I'm a European or Eastern European.
Apparently, the day is not a public holiday in any country except Odessa, Ukraine, where the 1st of April is an official city holiday. I don't know why, but that seems odd to me.
That makes it more inexplicable, but the stuff that happened, like the Thunder, I don't think most reasonable people thought was balanced, right? Especially with the Deadeye stuff. I see a nerf being a reasonable thing, and they have said that resource and special ships are subject to adjustments different than truly premium ships are. But I was a little surprised that it was range rather than reload or rudder ship, to be honest.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll get to this with our guest who's coming up shortly, but it is, I think the most important takeaway for this right now is that they are willing to change resource ships. The Thunder and especially the Stalingrad. We've been waiting for a change to Stalingrad for so long that I honestly don't think it even needs it anymore.
Yeah, that one caught me a little off guard as well, because when it originally came out, there was definitely some roles that it could play that could be described as being OP or doing things that no other ship could do quite like it. Between the changes that have happened since then and the commander rework, I don't know of many people who really thought the Stalingrad was overpowered or in need of a nerf.
Yeah, I think the commander rework was a really soft nerf to it, which was good. I thought overall it was good, which was that, battleships got a little bit more accurate, so suddenly they're not outperforming battleships in the way that I think they frequently used to. And of course, fire resistance. Is it fire resistance? What did it used to be called? Fire prevention, right?
Yes, fire prevention.
Fire prevention went away, so now it burns like a battleship, and it doesn't have access to the decreased fire chance. So I thought it sort of got stealth nerfed, and then of course with the advent of the Petro, it got more competition in terms of 12 km radar with unusual tankiness for a cruiser. So I mean, fine, fair enough, I guess. But the Thunderer thing, I'm just happy that they're willing to change it, and I think that as time goes on, they will make further adjustments to it. And yes, I agree, rudder shift or reload is really the major culprit.
Yeah, fire chance could have been an idea too, but if they're going to fix Deadeye, which by all of their comments, I believe they're going to throw it out and do something brand new, I don't think range is the place to go with the Thunder. But like you said, at least it sets that precedent, and maybe they did something like this just to see what the population of the game would say and how bad people would pick up their pitchforks and torches and stuff, and if it goes smoothly, then they'll do some other things. Based on what I see in randoms and what I see in clan battles and what we see in COTS, the Stalingrad thing, I don't think had to happen at all. If anything,
Yeah.
I've seen arguments that some of the super cruisers could use an adjustment to their fire duration to benefit them, because some of them could be burnt down and not the Petro, but other stuff can be burnt down a little too fast compared to the role it was supposed to play in the past.
Absolutely. Well, it is nice to see at the very least that they are willing to go forward with changes that the community has asked for. Now, I encourage everyone to remember that Wargaming is not a reactive company. They don't do things quickly, and it takes time. So take the win, take the W here, that they're willing to look at it. Let's hope that they settle in the future on, hey, increasing reload for the Thunderer, or maybe even just decreasing the HE damage so it doesn't have the British, slappy slap HE. So, but you know what we should do? We should transition. We should go talk to our guest. What do you say?
Yeah, let's have him on.
All right, let's go get him.
All right, we're here now with Statsbloke, and I just wanted to ask something, Borla. Did you ever hear that I'm an actor in Los Angeles?
Wait, Bogsy, are you serious? You're an actor. I've never heard of this before.
I have my own IMDb page and everything.
What? No way.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just to clarify to anybody who's not aware that it's April Fool's Day, and that because we're obviously terrible actors, I am Bogsy. He is Borla. If you're joining us for the first episode, maybe. So,
now that we've got that cleared up, we can talk to Statsbloke, right? Yes.
What's not an April Fool's joke is that we have Statsbloke. Hello, Stats.
Hello. How you doing?
Oh, we're very good. Very excited to have you here. This is actually the first time we've had the producer, creator, and host of another podcast on. So this is a rare treat.
Competition. I'm actually here to spy.
Oh, good Lord. Spying on mediocrity, right?
But you guys have been going a lot longer than we have, so we
This is episode 75. Statsbloke is 75. I know, it's pretty crazy. And it Borla, we found out that the last one was when we talked to Senpai. That was the 1 year anniversary of.
Basically, it was one day off of a year from when the podcast started.
I don't know how to feel about that. Well,
somehow it was 20 minutes the first time.
Oh God, we talked to 90th for 20 minutes.
I heard you say that. I heard you say it was 20 minutes. Like, how do you do a 20-minute? Hi, something goodbye.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to turn it into an interview of me or anything like that. But like, Synpax and I really did think that no one would want to listen for more than 20 minutes. So we tried really hard. We actually, get this, we tried to aim for 12 to 15 minutes. That was our aim, and we went to 20, and we were like, there was all this hand-wringing of like, oh God, are people going to get upset that we went 20 minutes? And, then we go an hour.
The funny thing is, the first one that was an hour was the episode that you interviewed Torino and I.
Oh, really?
All of them were closer, were shorter. And then at that point, we were about an hour. And then shortly after that, a bunch, I think that was the 12th episode. Then we really started. I mean, at that time it was you and Synpax, and then you, and then it kind of transitioned to you and I. But there were much longer podcasts after that. And then we've had some really long ones with Flambass and Conway and others.
Yeah. Well, before we again make this an interview about ourselves, let's let's find out a little bit about Stats here.
It's going to be hard though, because I'm used to, I'm used to being in your chair.
Sure.
So it's going to be really hard for me not to ask.
Well, that's okay. That's what. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. So, so you're an EU community contributor. You're a Twitch streamer. You're a YouTuber. You create content. You cast COTS, and now you have your own Warships podcast. So, give us just a little bit. Since you're an EU guy, and I'm sure a lot of NA folks who primarily are our audience, I'm sure they know who you are. But can you give us just a little overview, please, of how you got started in WoWs, how you got started in content creation, and then let's move on to how you started your own podcast.
Sure. So, with starting Warships, that was, when was that? I looked at this the other day. My first login was February 2017, so I wasn't quite there right at the beginning with beta testing and all that kind of stuff. But I've been playing for a while, and it got started when one of my friends, actually one of my school friends, who I have been playing online games with for years, things like Call of Duty and Ghost Recon and things like that, for the last 20 years. He said to me one day, because we were getting a bit bored with whatever game it was that we were playing at the time, he said, have you ever heard of World of Warships? I was like, no. What's that? And he explained it to me, and I remember I was kind of like, that just doesn't sound like me. And he was like, no, come on, try it. So I tried it, and here I am. So I mean, it just grabbed me for some reason. I think I was just before I started World of Warships, I was playing Fractured Space, which is, if anyone hadn't seen that, it's a very similar kind of game but set in space. I loved Fractured Space. It was a very similar concept. And as soon as I realized that World of Warships was kind of the same kind of game, I think that's when it grabbed me. And I joined a clan. So actually, we joined a clan together, me and my mate. And he actually stopped playing pretty quickly after that. He's a busy guy. He's got a family and a big job and stuff like that. But I kept playing. Joined a clan, a really, really friendly clan called All at Sea, who are still going. They're still going strong on EU. And then what happened to start me with content creation was a couple of guys in the clan, shout out to Pete and Nick particularly from the clan, if you happen to be listening, guys. They basically used to, busy guys, they've got got jobs, and they would log in and they would know that I would know what was going on. And so especially on patch day, they'd be like, Dan, my name's Dan, what's going on? And I'd have to explain to them, okay, well, this drop includes this, that, and the other, and you need to press this button and do these missions. And this went on for a few months, and I remember thinking, you know what? I've been watching, Flambass and Flammo and iChase and all these other great content creators who were big back then. And I remember thinking, I could do that. And so I started making these news videos for YouTube, specifically with those two guys in mind, or quite a few of the clan actually, so that they would have something to watch that explained everything in a kind of a nice format. With the hope that it would then become more popular, which it did. And that was the beginning of my YouTube channel. That was the beginning of my old series called Foghorn, which is why I called my news videos, which I've stopped doing now. I'll explain why maybe a bit later.
Okay.
Then after about, 9-10 months of doing that, I was starting to watch a lot more Twitch. I was starting to work from home a little bit, and so I had, the ability to have something on in the background, and so I started watching a few Twitch streams, mainly Flambass. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, that looks kind of fun. And so Christmas, when would it have been? Christmas 2018, 17? Oh, I've lost track of the years, but one Christmas I started streaming. So that was two years ago, yeah. And ever since then, I've been a Twitch streamer, but my focus stayed on YouTube, but has gradually switched over to Twitch, and now Twitch is my primary thing because I love the interaction. You don't get that on a YouTube video.
We're gonna have to do an entire episode just for the differences between Twitch streaming and YouTube streaming, because I know nothing about YouTube streaming versus Twitch at all.
Oh, so I've never actually live streamed on Twitch. So I'm talking about going from doing VOD content on YouTube to switching over to doing
I'm sorry,
content on Twitch.
I misunderstood.
No, that's fine. So for quite a while I was doing a full-time day job and streaming and doing these. I tried to do weekly news videos, but that just turned out to be way too much, so I ended up doing monthlies. I did some tutorial content as well. But basically the problem with YouTube is that for every minute of content, it takes many hours of actual time. So the news videos I did were like 15 minutes, and they would take me 8 to 12 hours. And the problem was that Wargaming would release the patch notes on a Tuesday, and NA patch was Wednesday. And so I would basically take the day off work. I would work for 12 hours straight, make the video, get it out there, and then it was valid for maybe 12 hours before the actual patch hit the NA servers.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and eventually I just thought, you know what? This is just not worth it. I haven't monetized my YouTube. It's causing me a lot of stress. I know some people like it, but it's not that many people. I'm going to focus. I'm just going to, it's just a healthy decision to say I'm going to focus on Twitch.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
That's pretty funny, though, that you basically started as like a dev blog translator for your buddies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But then you realize that with World of Warships, there's not really any true news, because everything that comes out almost comes from Wargaming originally. There's no, unless it's like a leak or like a reverse engineered thing that comes out of some test. Pretty much everything comes out of their channels, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But having a news channel for World of Warships, it just doesn't make sense.
It's almost like we are just interpreters, in the sense of they have a dev blog that functions as like, a periodical of sorts, and then the only thing that someone like us could do is sort of go, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for you? And there's an inherent limitation on that for sure.
So the sort of magazine style, this is what it is, that I was doing just doesn't make sense. And something like a podcast where you take that news a week or two later and you discuss what happened, that makes way more sense for a game like this.
And it also cuts a lot down on the production on the production time investment.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's perfect transition. Statsthonk, that's the name of your podcast, right?
It is. Yep.
Yeah, great. So please tell us how you got started with that.
So I know you guys kind of maybe had a similar thought. So I used to listen to the Warships podcast with Kalorn, Venacera, Erun, that group. Mm-hmm. And that was my Friday evening dog walking, because I walk my dog after I stream really late at night. And while I'm doing that, I'm usually listening to an audiobook or something like that. And so that was my Friday evening dog walking listen. And when they announced that they were stopping it, I was like, oh, that's such a shame. And at the time, I was just getting started with content creation. And then the last year or so, I've been thinking, you know what? I've got a platform now and a community where I could actually start up some kind of podcast to fill that gap. And at the time, when I was thinking that, I actually didn't realize that there's actually quite a few World of Warships podcasts out there that I hadn't realized that were there, including this one, and then a couple of others. And so we started, I don't know, it was like 2 months ago we started. So the we is me, and then two of my mods who've since become Twitch partners in their own right, Painzor and Killabin. So they're my co-hosts. And you'll often see us on each other's streams as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, we created this to fill that gap, but I didn't realize that gap actually had already been filled by several other people. But I think it's fine, because people tend to, in my experience, especially personally, people, if they listen to one podcast, they tend to listen to several along the same topic. And so it's not, it's like Twitch streaming. It's not a competition. I think the more there are, the healthier the community is.
Yeah, I agree very much with what you're saying. I was a fan of this podcast long before I was on it, and had talked to both Bogsy and Simpax about some of the things that I enjoyed. And at the time, pre-pandemic, I spent a lot of time on the road for work in the car and listened to podcasts and sports radio and things like that. And so this was a nice diversion. I've listened to your podcast, several episodes in the last couple of weeks, and you put out a really high quality podcast. One of the differences, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, is the time frame that your podcasts really dig into the details, probably on average about twice as long as the ones we do, or a little bit more.
Let me tell you something. So the first episode that we did, I can't remember the exact length. It was about 2 minutes, 2 hours 20, something like that. I remember saying to the other two, like, okay, we need to keep this to an hour, like 90 minutes, absolute maximum, because there's no one is going to be interested in listening to like a 9-hour podcast. And so they're like, oh, grumble, grumble, grumble. And I'm sure they won't mind me saying this. So then, sorry, chaps, if you do object. So we started recording, and we had a plan. Of course, none of us had done this before, so we had like a document that had all the things we wanted to talk about. And we got like halfway through, and it was like an hour and a half. I'm like, oh, and I like trying to like type messages to each other in this document, like, we need to hurry up. And they wanted to, like I was speeding it up towards the end. You can kind of hear me moving it on. And they really, really, really wanted to carry on going. And they were actually quite upset with me for about 2 days afterwards, because they're like basically like you stopped us talking. Like, well, I had to, otherwise we would have been there all day.
Oh my God.
So it's a very difficult thing to do, especially if you've got three. So in our case, it's three people who are passionate about a topic, who sometimes have quite different points of view. It's very difficult to actually stop yourselves talking about something until you sort of run the topic out. And I think when you're doing some kind of interview podcast type thing, you need to control the time a little bit. Although I do listen sometimes to Joe Rogan's podcast, like one of the biggest podcasts there is.
Oh yeah.
Probably
and
the biggest,
yeah, and he doesn't really do that. He just lets people talk.
Yeah, it's interesting about Rogan because, like, number one, they're always, I don't know about the guests, but like I'm pretty sure he's always stoned when he's doing an interview. Sort of to heighten his openness and to heighten his his sort of curiosity, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, but his guests are usually someone that has a major social issue they're affiliated with, I want to say. Or it's a comedian who literally won't shut up because they're comedians. But he almost always has someone that has an agenda, I want to say. That sounds a little malevolent, but like they have something that they want to
a message they want to
yes get. Okay, that's better. Yeah, agenda sounds like a denigration.
Nefarious.
It does sound nefarious. Yeah. So all he has to sort of do is go, aha, wow. Now
one of the best ones I'd ever listened to was I love physics, and one of my favorite physicists to read is Lawrence Krauss. And he had Lawrence Krauss on once, and listening to Joe Rogan, who knows nothing about physics, listening to a cosmologist talking about cosmology was just fascinating to me.
Did you guys ever see? This was one of the hardest ones I've ever watched. When he had Joe Rogan had Neil deGrasse Tyson on.
Yes,
I've seen clips, but I didn't see the whole thing. But I do think there is a special kind of social intelligence and awareness for someone who is hyper intelligent but can explain what their field of specialty is to someone who knows nothing about it in a way that makes them at least grasp the elementary side of it.
Yes.
And I think that's the strength that Joe Rogan has, is that he represents the average listener. So that he asks the kind of questions that the person sitting listening to it is probably thinking.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty apt analysis of like what gets Joe Rogan's audience sort of hooked and locked in, because again, like Stats was saying, he'll sit there and talk for 3 hours, and the whole thing's on camera as well, which I can't imagine trying to do this on camera. You guys would see my eyes glaze over, like you guys would see my eyes glaze over while I'm talking. It would not be good. But so
I do want to touch on one thing on your podcast, though, Stats, that I really enjoyed. We had Conway on right after they purchased COTS.
Yes.
And he talked about the purchase of COTS and some of the things from Wargaming's perspective. And then you had around the same, I think it was a little after, because you did mention our podcast, but you had...
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I don't know if
they were sort of two halves of the same thing.
Yeah, the EU admins for COTS and had the flip side of the same discussion with them. And I thought it was, if you listen to both podcasts, you really have a good picture of the story, I think.
So I was a little bit selfish in creating that episode because for the last 2 COTS, definitely, and maybe 3, I've been involved quite heavily in sort of the backroom stuff. Not organization exactly. I didn't had anything to do with like scheduling or anything like that, but in terms of advising the org team and Wargaming about streaming issues, so it's basically a representative for the streamers, to say, hey, look, we're worried about this thing in the schedule, or you need to take this into consideration, and then also trying to help particularly the newer streamers who are doing COTS for the first time to try and figure out what the hell is going on, because it's an extraordinarily complicated thing to do, to cast a tournament of that size. And so I've been involved in a lot of conversations, or been party to a lot of conversations between Wargaming and the orgs in the run up to the last COTS as this handover was actually being discussed, and so I had a lot of information that I couldn't talk about, and so I just wanted to get those two on, just so that they could talk about it themselves, so that because I had so many people knowing that I'm within that little group coming into my Twitch channel particularly and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And I couldn't say anything.
Right.
And so I wanted to get them on so that I could ask them questions, so that they could say it in their own words, and then I wouldn't have to worry about saying something inappropriate.
Yeah, well, I listened to it while I was at the gym, honestly. And by the way, everybody listening, you should go to Stats' channel, his YouTube channel. You can find all of his podcast episodes, I believe, stop me if I'm wrong, but all of them are there on his YouTube channel. It's
they're in all the usual places.
Yeah. It's episode number 3, where he and Painzor and Killerbin talk to Eclair and is Tobiasho, right?
Toby, yeah.
Who were the EU COTS organizers and the guys who, at the time, owned COTS. And I encourage you to go and listen to that podcast because it was great. But what really I took away from it was, and maybe this is my own naivete, but what I took away from it was I was like, oh, I had never really thought of content creation for something like a game as having intellectual rights. And obviously these two guys created something, but they created something within the creation of someone else's doing. And the most fascinating thing to me about that interview was listening to them very carefully tiptoe around the business agreements of it, the sale, which is some stuff they probably can't talk about because obviously Wargaming and them want to keep a certain amount of privacy in terms of,
it's probably in the contract to do so.
Yeah,
almost certainly.
So it was fascinating for me to then kind of go, oh, I really. It seemed like they were just doing something for fun. They mentioned that they wanted to create, they wanted to create an actual competitive format, and that they based the rules off of, I forget what it was. Supremacy League or was it? Originally, and but then of course they start to realize, oh, we've made something here. This thing that we created for fun, it suddenly has value that it's accrued. And then trying to sort of figure out how much is that value worth. It was fascinating to listen to. So thank you for, getting them on. Thank you as a person in the Warships community. Thank you for getting them on and sort of allowing them to give their side of it. Not that it was a conflict between them and Wargaming or anything like that, but
to be honest, I didn't have to persuade them very hard. They actually really wanted to talk about it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I think probably they were getting lots of messages going, oh, so how much, and all this kind of stuff. So I think giving them a platform to be able to actually talk about it, so maybe they could just point people to the thing and say, just go and listen to that.
Yeah,
I hope they got at least one torpedo pillow that everybody wants and nobody can get.
There's quite a few of those around actually, because CCs get sent them, and they were CCs, so they probably did get them. Also, I think Super Testers got them an event. There's a few of those around now, I think.
Aw.
I'm actually, mine's right in front of me here.
I don't have a torpedo pillow.
No,
I know, too late to the game.
This might be a perfect opportunity then to announce my very first venture into the merch department will be the Bogsy Time body pillow with large anime-inspired eyes. So you too can cuddle with Bogsy.
Take my money.
Yeah. Take my money right now. Also, this is totally random, but I think we should all drop an F in the chat for is it Evergreen? It's the Evergreen, right? Or Evergiven. The container ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal has been released. The Suez Canal's catch and release program for ships has been a perfect
One of my favorite things in the last couple of weeks has been the pictures of that little digger.
Yeah.
The little digger. The little digger.
The little digger that could.
Don't worry. Don't worry, massive ship. I'm going to free you with my little diggy thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was one of the greatest things about that was just watching the creativity surface from other people, wanting to be a part of it, and the memes that come out of that. I saw a War Thunder meme of a mouse that had been painted to look like the Evergiven and or the Evergreen, and they're just blocking a little canal in War Thunder. It's just little things you kind of go, oh, that's cool. So, well, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about COTS. First, I'd like to ask you specifically, and I know you talked about this on your podcast, but we need alms for the poor on our podcast as well. So, when you were functioning as an advisor, and forgive me if you still are, and I just misspoke, what kind of feedback did you find yourself giving to the COTS organizers and to Wargaming the most? I mean, what were the most pressing issues? Was it sort of cosmetic, or was it administrative or logistical?
So, I mean, to be honest, it was more the other way around. It was more that, say, Conway, for example, who's heavily involved, and obviously now is really heavily involved in King of the Sea EU, would come to me with like, "Hey, what do you think of this overlay?" Because the overlay pack that's produced for all the streamers to use, it's a bit of a collaborative effort, but a lot of the work is done by Wargaming. A lot of the artwork, obviously, is done by Wargaming in terms of the logo and the videos and all that kind of stuff. So for the last couple of COTS, I was involved in helping Conway to test that and make sure it's all working before it gets sent out. Because obviously, once you've given it to everyone, it's much harder to change things. So it was just a little bit of like just helping them test things. But then also just things with like just looking at the schedule before it gets released, just to sense check it from a streamer, just to make sure there's no particularly gaps. So if you're a streamer, and Conway knows this well, so I don't think I ever actually had to say, hey, there's a gap here, but so Conway calls it monkey dance. So if you have a big
in between matches when you have to fill dead air.
Yeah, I love that phrase. I've stolen it. So so like a match ends and then you have to wait, like 15, 20 minutes for the next match.
Sure.
And it's the problem when you do King of the Sea, you very quickly realize when you then go and do a different tournament, how well organized King of the Sea has been. Because the downtime is minimal, especially in the most recent one, COTS 11. They staggered the start times so that if you went off your schedule, you could basically just put your hand up in the adjudicators channel and go, hey, can we have a match? And you would have a match within a minute, and that was incredible.
Yeah, can confirm. Having cast the last COTS as well, it was I would say exceptionally efficient in terms of that. I know that there had been a little bit of grief given to them over the initial organizing, but I mean it ran really smooth to be a caster, and to be given this giant apparatus ahead of time, where they take up so much of the work for you and do it. They create this really cool casting package where, you basically plug it right into your casting software. I use OBS and there's all these scenes and transitions and assets that are set up, and all you got to do is adjust a few things to your own, to function properly with your own setup, and then it's professional, and you go, oh, it's I don't know. It's like a uniform. It's very cool.
It's impressive.
Yeah,
it's impressive, and I think that they are working on that a little bit more for the next one. So I'm hoping it's going to be even more slick, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah. Well, so I have a tiny bone to pick with you, and
oh no,
yes, absolutely, and I'm excited about this because there was one thing that stuck out from your interview with Toby and Eclair, which was your discussion about the global bans and the individual bans. Global ban, of course, being now with the upcoming COTS, they said that, hey, they're going to instigate a gimmick where the community votes on a ship to ban for the entirety of the tournament, Petro, and it's gonna be Petro or Kleber. I'll put money on it. And then the other was, of course, that they are instituting the rule that the NA folks are going to be very familiar with, which is ship bans after a certain threshold. I think it's like round of 64 or 32, where they start to have ship bans at the beginning of the game. Boral, do you remember which one it was?
I think it was 32 before.
I doubt it's 64.
Yeah, that
I
seems
think it was
too
32
much.
Before. I don't know that they've announced
it's
this
just
time.
too.
Yeah.
It's way too much admin overhead to do.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just say 32. Let's make some fake news. Let's just say at the round of 32 beginning there, every team is given the opportunity to ban 2 ships at the beginning of each match. So 4 ships get banned, right? It's 4.
I think it's because they're doing the global bans. I think it's just 1 this time.
1 each team.
Right.
Is what
Sorry,
they've said.
I meant in the previous Scots it was 2.
Yes,
per,
2.
okay, yeah. And now it's going to be
for NA.
Right. For NA it was 2 per side per match, and
For
now
EU, it was no bans.
Right, for EU, for CIS, and SCA, it was no bans whatsoever. You guys, it sounded like, and I don't want to mischaracterize you, but it sounded to me like you thought that it's a greater display of skill to not have bans, because then you are able to practice, hone, and execute as well as possible a strat that you've been able to work on ahead of time. And I charge that, in my opinion, it's a greater test of skill to be so good at the game that you can literally adjust on the fly, and that's my assertion.
I think it's I think it's 2 different. It's 2 different skills, right? So it's testing being a specialist versus testing being a generalist, and they are both valid things to test, but they are different things to test. And my opinion, so I'm an ex-competitive sports person as well. I understand, competing at a very high level. And if you, basically, as long as the playing field is level and everyone knows what the playing field is, as far as I'm concerned, it's game on.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what you're letting yourself in for. It's fair for everyone. It's fine. So obviously doing something like the old COTS international format, where you've got, say, the EU teams coming through with no bans, and then you've got the NA teams coming through with bans, and then having them fight each other under one or other rule set, that's not fair, in my opinion. So globalizing the rule set is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it means then when they all meet at the end, they're still fighting underneath the same rules. But it does mean that, of course, one of the servers is at least going to have to deal with a change in the rules. And so it does change the competition very slightly. And so EU's point of view, just because this is the way that they've been playing, is that bans are bad because we're used to being able to prepare weeks in advance for having certain lineups on certain maps.
Right.
Because, all the teams have been playing for a very long time now, and they all understand each other quite well. And so they'll prepare, this is our lineup for the north spawn of this map and the south spawn of this map, and so on. And so throwing in these random bans really, really throws a spanner in the works for doing that kind of planning. Because then you've got to okay, well, if our key linchpin ship in that position gets banned, what are we going to do to adapt? And so suddenly you have to have all these contingency plans. And it's just something that the EU teams are not used to doing. So they'll get over it. It'll be fine. But they're going to be upset in the meantime. So I don't think it's not a display of, it's not a case of more skill or less skill. It's just a different thing being tested for the team.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the balance that Wargaming struck was a decent one, right? Like having maybe one global ban and then having one ban each team will put the reality somewhere in the middle between what EU experienced and what NA experienced. I think there's arguments both sides. You'll have people hardcore believing what they did before was probably better.
I think there's actually some evidence that the current clan battles season, with the dynamic bans and stuff that they're doing in that, and restrictions. So I'm playing clan battles quite heavily at the moment, and that actually seems to be working.
I wish they had done another round of some adjustments.
Yeah, they maybe they could have done, but honestly, if they're sitting there thinking, actually, the comps that people are bringing right now are dynamic enough that we don't need to touch it, I respect that decision, because it's easy to go too far, and I think that clamping things down too much is, you're just going in the opposite direction then. So you've got to leave the team some kind of choice, I think.
Yeah, I would have liked to seen a tiny bit of fine tuning around some of the destroyer comps, but I
think a restriction on destroyer numbers may have been good, like
overall,
3,
yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. 3 would have been a nice number.
the fact that that system is working in clan battles, I think suggests that it is a healthy thing for King of the Sea as well, especially when you consider we had teams of, like 6 Petros and 5 Petros last time. Developing, because the problem is that in a tournament, especially in a big tournament like that, the clans or the teams are watching each other very closely, and once one of the good teams cottons on to something like, oh, we just bring all Petros. Bearing in mind that before the tournament, they all said, oh, no, Petra's not a problem.
Right.
Weak ship. There's nothing ship. And suddenly, one of the teams goes, actually, you know what? We're just going to bring Petros. And then suddenly, within like 2 rounds, everyone is doing it. And having that dynamic ban system will help to combat that.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's switch gears to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. We've talked about the competitive and COTS and claim battles. You had mentioned something to us before we got started about and I listened to some of this on your podcast as well, and was in agreement with some of your thoughts that you stated on your podcast regarding the brand new player experience. There's a couple of good things, but there's also probably some low-hanging fruit that could really be improved for the new player experience. Do you want to share some of your ideas?
Yeah, so I am continually frustrated or just perplexed with some of the decisions that Wargaming make, as I'm sure many of us are. And one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in, and this is because I started to make a series, actually twice now, I've started to make a series, like a Zero to Hero kind of, like a beginner's series where I say, hey, you've literally just signed up for the game. This is what you have to do if you want to progress in the game and learn how to play it. And if you try and sit down and make a series like that for World of Warships, what you realize very, very quickly is that you are going to have to create pretty much everything, because the amount of information that's in the game for beginner players is practically zero in terms of teaching. So the thing is, once you've played the game for a little while, you forget, as an experienced player, you forget what that experience was like when you started. So let me just refresh your memory a little bit. So you log in. A lot of the stuff that you have unlocked now, like clan battles and even random battles, training room, all that kind of stuff is all locked behind account levels, which is great. I think that's a good thing. Trickling information is a good thing. You do a tutorial. So the first thing you do is you choose between either Eerie or I think it's Hashidate, and you run through a little 5-minute tutorial. Where basically you're told, you can go forwards, you can go left and right, you can shoot your guns, and you drive into the cap, and that's it, you're done. And that's literally it. That is the tutorial. And it doesn't teach you about concealment. It kind of does, but not really. Certainly not things like smoke, how smoke works with concealment, how firing bloom works with smoke, how hydro works with smoke, how radar works with smoke, how radar works with islands, how hydro works with islands, how hydro works with torpedoes. It doesn't teach you about the difference between HE, SAP, and AP. It doesn't teach you about armor. It doesn't teach you about overmatch. It doesn't teach you about angling. And you could say, well, actually, a lot of that stuff you can pick up from the UI, because you can mouse around the UI and you can learn this stuff by reading it in the UI. Like, for example, HE penetration. That is true. However, you try learning about AP penetration or even SAP penetration from the UI of the game. It is literally impossible because that information is not there.
Yeah, you are pretty much stuck relying on a third-party data miner or a compiler to tell you anything. And even then, you sort of have to go, what in the hell? I still don't understand what CRUP is.
Exactly. Yeah. And neither do I, to be frank. So
good.
You are you're completely reliant on third-party tools, and you're completely reliant on content creators to get your tutorial content, basically. And you can think, oh, okay, well, Wargaming are just bad at helping people learn the game. But then you sit and think about it, and you think, hang on a minute, this is a free-to-play game. So Wargaming are completely reliant. So free-to-play games, I've often heard this described as a bucket. So it's a bucket of some kind with a hole in the bottom, and you're pouring players in the top, and they are falling out of the hole at the bottom.
Okay.
And because that's how it works, right? So people log into the game, they start playing the game, and then for a huge variety of reasons, they stop playing the game. That might be that they've been playing it for a long time and they just get fed up, they move on to another game, they get married, whatever it happens to be. And so there's constantly players dropping out of the bottom. And what you try and do as a free-to-play game is you try and have the bucket gradually filling up because you're pouring more players in the top than are falling out at the bottom.
Almost like it's
not
a
empty.
machine that requires an input.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I almost said and has waste, or it has like a byproduct, and the byproduct is people stop
And
playing.
so one of the things that's going to stop people falling out of the bottom is that they understand the game that they're playing, because obviously if you are confused by the game, you're way more likely to stop playing, in my humble opinion. Because you're like, oh, I just don't understand this, and you're just going to stop. And also probably your performance is not going to be as good, so you're not going to have fun.
And if you play, you're definitely not going to spend as much money if you don't understand over time.
Exactly.
Well, that for sure,
There
yeah.
is the nail. Yes. So you're not spending money on the game because you've stopped playing, and so you're not feeding the game because the game needs that revenue. And it doesn't matter whether it's like someone buying loads and loads of premium ships and spending a fortune, or whether it's someone just a little bit of premium time here and there every weekend, or whatever it happens to be. That's all income that goes towards keeping the game going, because they've got to pay their staff, they've got to whatever. And so basically it just I don't understand why you would have a free-to-play game where you are completely dependent on grabbing people and keeping them, that you wouldn't hold the hand of that player for at least a little while and say, hey, these are the core mechanics of the game, this is how you play. Now, Wargaming do have a very good, I have to give them some credit, they do have a very good How It Works series on YouTube. And some of those videos are linked to in the game, but last time I checked, last time I started an account, which was reasonably recently, as you go through the access levels, those videos are kind of hidden. So you have to come out of the access levels and then go back into an access level that you've already got to actually find the video. And I've given that feedback to Wargaming. I honestly haven't gone back and checked whether they fixed it. So it may be now that the video is right there in your face that explains, hey, this is what a random battle is, this is what, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you press the escape key in the game, you'll also find there's a list of videos.
Really?
The button says, yeah. You're blind to it because you see it every day, but
Yeah,
it's there. And you will notice that one of the videos, for example, is team battles. There haven't been team battles in this game since I started playing.
I started after team battles were already gone. Yeah.
I was around for team battles, but I didn't play any, and I started in 2015, I think.
Yeah. That shows you how long it's been since they paid any attention to that particular, help section.
Wow.
So a new player is going to log in and go, what are these team battle things? Oh, I'll watch this video. Oh, great, team battles, cool. I'll do that. That's great.
Right.
But they
And I
haven't been
think
there.
and I think your point is good that the how it works videos are well done. They explain things pretty well, but the fact that you don't have to watch them as you progress, or there's not some clear path through them as you progress, maybe even a reward if you watch them the first time, something like that, it would be helpful to raise the level of knowledge that the new player has.
I would love to see a set of optional scenarios. So you do that first mandatory tutorial. That's great. That should definitely be mandatory. But if you're creating a second account or something, you don't want to be made to go through all these things, so they should be optional. But have a set of scripted scenarios that just says, okay, this is how smoke spotting works. And you spawn into a training room kind of scenario, and you're like, okay, there's a destroyer over there, it's just smoked, and this is how you spot it, this is how it spots you. And okay, go and hydro the smoke screen, go and radar the smoke screen, and then from the other point of view, okay, you're sitting in a smoke screen, there's a radar cruiser over there, this is what happens. Or that's a battleship that's just fired, oh look, it's spotted because it's inside its bloom range. There could be a series of those little scripted tutorials, and I'm gonna call them out. War Thunder, their direct competitor, do this way better.
Yeah, I like the idea of a little 5 or 7 minute tutorial scenario that you have to play through to learn those things, or at least as an option to play through and learn those things. The videos, I just looked, there's over 20 of them. So there's a library there. Yeah. And it's useful stuff. Just most people haven't watched. Yeah.
Yeah. Fires and floods and damage saturation mechanics to me were the most helpful, frankly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think I learned something watching most of those videos, and they just need to shove them in people's faces a bit.
Yeah, it would almost. I mean, I don't know if maybe. How do you do that? Like maybe you just make a drop-down menu that says like "Help me" or something. I don't know.
Well, it's
the first time through. Yeah,
it's literally there.
The first time through, they like he mentioned as you progress, because I've done some second accounts and third accounts, and you have to go through certain steps before you can unlock camouflages and signals and commanders and all those things. If along the way they had scenarios to teach you smoke firing mechanics, hydro, radar, damage saturation, all of those things, it would be helpful.
And also import things like, commander management, what the difference between an upgrade and a module is, how, I don't know, like camouflages work and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, one of the things I remember when I was first playing the game, and I was free to play for long enough to get a Nelson using free XP, 375,000 free XP that I accrued without spending a dime. I was free to play for a long time, and one of the things that I found very, very difficult was trying to understand and figure out, like, when you're progressing up a line, is it worth saving your boats? Is it worth saving your commanders? How does that work exactly? And now, of course, I don't even think about it, but I do recall that being a frustrating concept of where's the efficiency sort of ceiling
I think
line.
That's something obviously I don't think you will see Wargaming do, because obviously they have a revenue stream that revolves around things like doubloon conversion and things like that. So that is the role of the content creator.
Right.
To do so for example, I made a video about the research bureau.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
So, I got, when that came out, I got so many people coming into Twitch chat. I'm sure, most streamers had the same thing. Like, can you please explain this research bureau thing? And this would happen like 6 times a stream. And so I literally lost my voice trying to explain it. And, all the regulars who've heard this like 5 times, like, oh my God, can you just get on with it and play some games? And so I thought, I know what I'll do is I'll basically give this speech to YouTube, and then I can just link people to it and they can go and watch it. And so now literally I have people coming and say, hey, can you explain the research bureau? So I go, hey, go and watch this video. And if anyone's interested, by the way, who's listening, you can find it on my YouTube channel. Just go and search for Research Bureau, and I'm sure you'll find the video on my channel. It's a half-hour guide to how the Research Bureau works, how to do multiple resets. So when you use free XP to reset the line multiple times without playing the ships, so that you get the multiple bonus, having only played the ships once, which is the thing that most people want to know about. And it just covers pretty much everything you want to know. And that's the kind of thing that content creators need to be doing. Not like, this is how you fire your guns. The game should do that for you.
Right.
We should be doing things like, hey, the most efficient way to make credits is this. Like, that's our job.
Yeah. What's interesting about that? There's 2 things, because you just mentioned something that caused me to remember something that Borla and I were tossing around about the Captain's rework. But before we get to that, there's a specific video that really caught my attention. It's not what introduced me to you, because I knew about you beforehand, but it really made me go like, oh, okay. I like this guy. I like his charisma. I like his style, which was specifically, you did the math on, the stats on what it would take to get the achievement for 150 line resets in the Research Bureau. You did the math on how much real world money that would cost and whatnot. And I encourage everybody to go and actually, check out that video and throw a like and a subscribe while you're there. But can you just give us a real quick brief
I honestly can't remember the figure, but basically I think something like the news came out about that achievement while I was streaming, or it just come out that day or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And someone just happened to ask me in Twitch chat, what do you think about these new achievements? And it just occurred to me, like, while I was streaming, like, hang on a minute, you could work out, because you can work out what the how much money, real world money, it costs to convert XP using doubloons, because you buy the doubloons, you use the doubloons to convert the XP, and then you use that XP to do the resets.
Right.
So it must have a real world value. I mean, if you wanted to literally whale the Research Bureau 150 reset badge, you can literally do that with your wallet. You get out your credit card, you know, you buy some doubloons, and you can just do it. And so I thought, hey, you know, it'll be fun. It won't take very long. Let's see if we can work out how much that would actually cost approximately. And I honestly can't remember what the figure was, but it was ridiculous.
I think it was something like 14 grand, wasn't it?
That sounds very familiar.
I think it was 14,000.
And I think that's pounds, not dollars.
Which, for anybody who doesn't know,
like 20 grand.
Yeah, the pound is a little more worthy than the dollar.
That stuff, like, I understand why Wargaming doesn't explain easily the conversion costs and things like that, because in my early days of playing this game, I spent money on credits and some very stupid things. I think I probably bought Bogsy's Nelson, is what it comes down to. but yeah, that video on calculating everything for all of those line resets, I definitely think people should go check that out.
I think another role that I think not contributors but content creators specifically, not just CCs, have is to point things out like that. Like, don't convert to credits, because that's really, really bad value for money. Right. Save your money for things like Christmas crates and actual premium ships and things like that, because that's where the value is. You know, trying to point out where the bad deals are, like spending money on tech tree ships in the early access, for example, which is something I always say on my streams. Don't do that, because it's going to be free in 4 weeks. Did you really?
Look, okay. I'm
well. Thank you for paying for the game.
Hold on, just 1 second here, because I want to give credit where credit is due, and the credit, in my opinion, one of the best things about this game is the art department, and I love many of the premium camos. I am not a fan of the Italian battleships, but the camos are so cool. They're so great.
Yes.
The Legionnaire and the Roman camos are just, they're gorgeous.
One of the best moments in the history of the podcast is when
Synpax
Synpax found out that Bogsy spent money on steel.
Not money, steel. I spent 10,000 steel on a steel Yamato camo. I don't even like the Yamato. And he was
and your Atlanta palm tree camo?
And the Atlanta palm tree, but because, I mean, I enjoy a good trolling every once in a while, and I thought, that's perfect. I mean, a palm tree on my Atlanta. And Synpax was palpably disappointed in me.
Yeah.
And it was delightful. So
I'm a big fan of the palm tree Atlanta. I like to put on Hawaiian music when I play.
There you go. And by the way, now I can't get the Austin because I'm short on steel. So
sure.
Anyone I wish now they also released it so that you can put the steel camo can be applied to pretty much anything, right?
Yes.
I wish that I could take that back and put it on something else. I don't know what I would do. Borla, what would you?
It'd be nice if they offered you an option to unlink it.
That would be great, just once. You know, I know they're not big on that, although they have been more lenient lately about like, hey, we changed something, so if you did this before, we could. Borla, what would you steal? What would you?
So
cast in metal?
Our mutual buddy JGHC, Bogsy.
Yeah, he helped me. He sent me a new computer.
Yeah, so he's taking a break from the game, but he used to whale a bunch of things, and it was a bad influence on me because I would whale the things with him, so he didn't look so dumb. We'd both go together, and so I would steal my ARP Yamato just to be a whale on top of a whale.
Oh my god. I'm so disappointed. I don't know if I can imitate Synpax's disappointment, but Lord,
it's at that level, isn't it?
Stats, what would you steal?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I think if you're gonna get a steel camo, it's a very kind of hey, look at me kind of thing to do. It's got to be FTR, surely.
Oh Jesus! I didn't even think about
to
carrier.
go full, in your face troll. Oh, okay, you're a carrier, see at the back, but maybe not. But like, if someone gets the opportunity to spot your hull, they're just going to see this massive block of steel.
Yeah,
as they get bombed to oblivion.
I honestly like if the American battleships, the new American battleships, if their camos, the Golden Eagle camos, if those weren't so cool looking, I would say that, any one of those, like the Minnesota, I think might be a cool steel camo, just because it to me it already looks like the superstructure and the profile of the Minnesota to me looks like the silhouette of a city, a giant fantasy city on a hill, in like a painting or a poster or something. It just looks absurd. So I think that would be pretty fun as a steel camo, since that's the purpose of this podcast, is to figure out
the
which...
Super Star Destroyer of World of Warships.
Yeah, it would look like the Super Star Destroyer of Warships, which I heard they're making a video game out of. They're making a Suez Canal simulator, by the way. Someone's actually developing that game, and they better real quick make it cross-brand so that I can drive a Star Destroyer down the Suez Canal. That's the only way I'm buying that game. But so Stats, you brought up something about feedback, and you've been a CC for much longer than I have, and we all figure out how wargaming deals with feedback in our own time, and some people never figure it out and get very angry. But you mentioned something earlier about sort of what you think the role of the CC is, and what you think, and CC, and also Super Tester and Clan Super Tester and whatnot, and what you think it could be. So let's recount that a little bit.
Okay, so going back, because I've been a CC for a while, so I've seen a few changes of management, if you want, in the community programs in St. Pete's, with Earl Grey coming in and then going out again, and there's been a few changes. And one of the things that Wargaming changed, which I am, by the way, totally behind, and that is that we can no longer play test ships on stream.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely behind that decision because it caused a lot of problems with people getting an initial impression of a ship and then that impression sticking. So the X ship is OP, which test ships, frankly, are usually OP when they're introduced. That's just the way it works. And then they get dialed down or up as needs be. But that initial impression really sticks. And so that, I think, has been almost completely removed now because we don't show them on stream anymore or in YouTube videos or whatever. And so people, the first real impression sort of in your face they get is actually when it's released. And so the ship is far more likely to be in a balanced state. I think that's a good thing. Unfortunately, at the time that they made that change, my streaming content was 90% playing test ships. So I had this horrible, I really support that decision, but that is such a pain for me because I had to actually start playing the game on stream rather than just derping around in these test ships.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a bit of a problem, but that's fine because I supported the decision. The bit that I didn't understand was I need to be kind of skirting. I've got to activate that bit in my head that says, is this NDA or is this not NDA? So they basically, they had an opportunity, I think, when they did that to say, hey, okay, you're not allowed to show this content before release anymore. But what I was expecting them to then say was, but we're gonna massively increase how we use you in terms of essentially free PR. So we are not, sort of, to make it clear, community contributors are not paid. I know there's been a lot of discussion about this recently, but there is no financial exchange between us and Wargaming. Yes, we are given in-game assets. We're given the ships, quite a lot of the ships for free. We are given doubloons for free and camos and a few other things, but we're not paid. But they could use us as free advertising, essentially. They could say, hey, can you showcase this new premium ship for a week or 2 weeks before release to hype it up?
Yes, I wish they would let us do that as well, because not only would that be good for them in terms of advertising, but it would also be great for a content creator to be like, look at this exclusive awesomeness that I have.
And to be fair, they have very, very recently, in the last few weeks, they have just started to do something that's like that. But, for example, there was a ship, which one was it? There was a ship recently, it might have been Austin, where they literally gave us 18 hours, and that happened to be my day off.
Oh, that's nice.
So I was like, oh, great, that's great for me because I can't play it. Thanks. So so I didn't get to show that exclusively.
Sure, yeah.
But hopefully they'll kind of cotton on to the fact that that's a good thing, particularly for premiums. I mean, I've had people recently come into my Twitch chat, and I'm like playing. So Leone was a good example recently, where they just quietly released it, and people are like, "Oh, is that released?" And I have people in game like, "Oh, is that out, or is that still gesture?" Like, no, it's released.
Yeah.
And I've had people like with things like other releases that they did really quietly, like Champagne, for example.
Yeah.
I've had people very recently saying, "Oh, is that a test ship?" Like, no,
it's been around forever.
You can go and buy it.
You strike on something that I think even in a broader way, wargaming could benefit from. Obviously for CCs, there's some benefit of doing what you're talking about and some free PR for ships like that, but there's other programs. My group is part of the Clan Special Testing, and again, like you mentioned, there's NDA stuff. I'm a privateer for helping with the forums in NA, and the amount of people who care about this game and have a decent amount of knowledge of this game that would willingly offer reasonable ideas, because there's ideas that could be thrown out there that are just off the wall and they don't fit in the game, and the mechanics or the implementation of them would be a massive amount of work. But a lot of us, I think, understand the game enough that we could give some reasonable ideas, and it's difficult to put those ideas in the ears of someone who will listen, and then to ever know if they were ever heard. I've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast, and Stats, I can show this to you later. I, about a year and a half ago, sent some proposals for Clan Battles adjustments and got it in the hands, and I know that it was looked at by at least a few people and got zero feedback. And some of the things that we've seen since then have been implemented, or very close clones of what I offered have been implemented, but there's tons of smart people who would be willing to give ideas or better feedback beyond just testing the ideas and then giving more data for the spreadsheet, or saying, no, this is too strong or too weak or needs adjusted.
But yeah, the thing is, I quit a day job last year that was working in large scale IT, and so I have an idea of the kind of environment that wargaming have, working environment, information environment particularly. And so I totally get it. Like, when you put a piece of feedback in and nothing seemingly happens, I understand like how that happens, because it just gets lost in the noise, or someone does pick it up but then they don't have time to reply to you. And so I understand how that can happen. But from our point of view, being the ones who are taking our own time typing out some big bit of feedback, to then just it disappear into a void, and then maybe even more frustratingly have it actually get implemented a few months down the line, and then you get no message back, no thank you, no nothing. that can be a little bit like, because what happens then, I've seen it many times over. I'm not like a first generation CC, but I've seen several new waves of CCs come in. You see them come in and they'll be really enthusiastic, like crack knuckles. Okay, right, I'm gonna fix the game.
Yes.
You see them typing away in the feedback channel. I got all these ideas, and then gradually, the number of messages that they type over the next few months just dwindles, because they're not getting any interaction. And
I feel personally attacked.
But it's a very difficult. I totally sympathize with wargaming investment, because if you put yourself in their shoes, you've got maybe, I don't know, like 2 or 3 people like monitoring particularly the CC feedback channel. There's obviously there's other feedback channels, some of which include the entire player base, like the forums, and so they get so much feedback that
the challenge would be picking the sources that were worth listening to. And I feel like some of the testing programs they've done a decent job of choosing who is there, and but I think soliciting new ideas would be a place that wargaming could take advantage of some of those resources they already have.
I also just want to address something else, and that is, like, regularly, and you see it in many different places, people saying wargaming don't listen. No, they do. They just don't agree with you. they absolutely do listen. Not obviously to every single piece of feedback ever submitted, like we just said, but they
Right.
absolutely do have their ear on the ground. And when you say things like "You did remove the radar," like no, they're not going to do that just because someone says that.
Yeah.
Um,
So you don't think in a patch or two we're gonna have all CVs gone?
I think it's unlikely.
It's
I think in a patch or two we might get submarines.
Oh, good lord. I want to. It's a good point about like all feedback is not equal. All feedback is not created equal, and oftentimes a company like this will take some feedback and go, "Hey, that's a pretty good idea." Generally, in my experience, though, they don't immediately say to you, "That's a really good idea. We might just do that. Thank you," and then pat you on the head.
We'll see
and
it
move
in
along.
6 weeks' time. Yeah, no, they're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
this doesn't really happen. This is just a little anecdote of mine here, but like, I'm super proud of this, and this is pathetic. But I used to play Defense of the Ancients a long time, Dota, before it was its own game, and before League of Legends, when it was a community mod for Warcraft 3. And there were actually two versions of it originally, but anyone who's familiar with Dota will remember Pudge, which is it's the abomination, and it has this really cool thing where it slings a meat hook in a straight line, and it grabs another hero and it drags him to it. But it has this one of the skills at the time, I don't know if it still is or not, is every time you get a kill on a creep or on another hero, it adds to your strength. It adds to your strength value, so as you go and as you progress, you gain attributes, you gain stats in this way. And for the longest time, there was no way to find out how much you'd actually accrued. So I said, hey, could you make a command for Flesh Heap that tells you how much strength you've accrued? And they put it in. And I was like, oh my God, they did it. That was me. And then eventually they just made it so that there was an active counter running at all times where you could see it. And I don't know if that's still in Dota or not, but or in Dota 2, the standalone version. But I got that done, guys. I got
That's amazing.
the Flesh Heap stat to be permanent.
There's been
welcome.
things recently where I know that one of my viewers has pointed out a bug or something, and I've submitted it, and the bugs lead has said, right, accepted, got it, thank you. And it's been fixed, and so I've been able to go back to that original person and say, hey, you fixed this.
Yeah. It's a good
and
feeling.
That's always really nice, but it's a very rare thing to happen.
I think things like them posting the COTS survey feedback, or a large portion of it, is a step in the right direction or a sign of some of it. I think we just, and we've talked about this before, Stats, on various episodes, that I think especially what people in North America and maybe somewhat in Western Europe feel about how customers should be responded to is a little different culturally too. And so we're like, hey, we all complain, so you should be doing something and it should adjust to what we complain. And that's just not the reality all over the world as far as culture and how business is done.
And also, I think the WoW's, actually not just the WoW's player base, but all of the wargaming games, the player bases for all this, particularly obviously tanks as well, tend to complain about wargaming's communication, but actually they're pretty communicative when you compare them to some other games companies. You might not like some of the communication.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
But actually, they, I can literally call someone like Conway and have a conversation with him, and there's not many games companies that would probably do that with the community. And like, if you can go on their live stream and ask them a question. If it's a sensible question, they will try their best to answer it.
I want to point out too that when we were very fortunate enough to have Sub Octavian himself come onto the podcast and talk with us, he was very open to our questions, and I thought he was very forthright with his feedback. And the biggest thing I took away from that was I got a sense of who the mouthpieces are at wargaming, or at least within the World of Warships part of wargaming, I should say, in terms of like, look, it was nice to hear a human being say, yeah, no, like, we get it. We get that you're unhappy with these things. It's not going to change, and it...
If you can, I don't think you have already. One person that you should get on if you can is Evan.
Evan?
So he is the publishing director for NA.
Mm-hmm.
So our equivalent in EU would be Lord of Droid.
Oh, okay.
He is a lovely guy. He is super intelligent. And whether he would have time to do it, I don't know. But if you could get him, that would be a really interesting.
Oh, we don't allow people onto the podcast who are smarter than me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He speaks like
Now
seven
I feel
languages or
personally
something.
attacked.
Oh,
Yeah, so he moved from St. Pete's to Texas recently,
oh, okay. So,
and you could easily assume that he was working in St. Petersburg. He was Russian. No, he's Polish,
oh,
and he speaks
interesting.
fluent Russian,
Well-
and like 6 other languages.
Yeah, Europeans, man. I don't understand. You don't consider yourself a European, though, do you?
Yes, but we don't do that thing where we learn everyone's languages.
Oh, well, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, no, I think it's the same in all English speaking countries. I think we're just spoiled by the fact that many people speak English as a second language, and so we just
My
don't
favorite
really bother.
part of traveling outside the United States is listening to Americans just talk louder in English and expect the people like don't you speak
Yeah.
English?
Oh my
It's-
God, oof.
It's,
I
and
never heard
it's something
of
I'm
that.
ashamed of. I'm really ashamed of the fact that I speak a little bit of French and German, but not really.
Yeah, I remember
So-
getting I got scolded in Switzerland by the owner of a hostel I was staying at for not knowing that grocery stores in Switzerland close at 5:30 p.m. He scolded me for being an ignorant American and not speaking other languages, and I had a nice conversation with him where I was like, "Look, I assume you speak what, 7?" He goes, "Yeah, I speak 7," and then I guessed the ones because 4 of them border Switzerland, and I said, "Look, I said, do you speak Spanish?" He says, "No, why would I speak Spanish?" And I said, "Exactly. I speak Spanish because in all of the continents of North and South America, there's like 3 official languages: Spanish, English, and Portuguese for the most part, and maybe French if you consider French Canadians to be people." But sorry, that's a little joke for all you French Canadians out there. Happy Canada Day.
Can you explain it
Explain what?
for the French Canadians?
Oh, absolutely. But and I sort of was like, look, I would love to, but I would never have the opportunity to practice German because it doesn't come up, or practice Polish. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult your culture. I'm just hungry. And he's like, oh, I was really friendly about it. And he's like, oh, I feel terrible that I just bashed you and shamed you for this, and you're just hungry. And then, of course, I go to a little convenience store that he pointed me in the direction of, and there are 3 dipshit American kids there who are just behaving terribly. And I was like, God damn it, you guys! I just did diplomatic
Just built the relation
miracles
exactly.
for
We
America.
got a point and you subtracted 3.
Yeah. So, well, guys, we're a little over an hour now, and it's been a while, which it's fine. But I'd like to make sure we get to the end game here, because number 1, we need to have Stats sink a ship, and number 2, oh no, I forgot. I had a second thing I was gonna. Okay. Well, Stats, it's time to sink a ship now. Let's assume in this little fantasy that you call up Conway, you convince him of the error of his ways, and you get his job. After you get Conway's job, you go to St. Petersburg, you hypnotize everyone who works there, and you get the security card. You then go down into the salt mines where they keep all the film negatives of like JFK's murder and all the proof that we're not supposed to be seeing, and along with it, the server, the wargaming server. You put the key card in, you open up a vault, and first it says, "Good morning, Sub-Octavian, I love you." And then you're like, ha, I'm not Sub-Octavian, I'm Statsbloke. And you dig down into the subroutines, into the folders, and you find that ship that you've always hated, and you delete it. What's that ship going to be?
Okay. So I've genuinely been pacing up and down trying to think of an answer for this. So I could go with the standards, like Smarland and things like that. Thunderer, but we don't have to worry about Thunder anymore, right? Because that's being balanced.
Oh yeah, the range
Totally,
reduction,
that's
that
totally
fixed
been
it.
balanced.
It's
Yeah,
all
that's going to fix everything. It's going to be fine. So I'm not going to go for a ship that I hate. I'm going to go for a ship that makes me sad
Oh,
regularly.
okay.
And so this is a ship. I'll describe it and see if you can get it. So this is a ship that is at high tier, is usually really badly misplayed. It's a really good ship if you play it well, but every time you see one of these, it's usually being played really badly. It's usually being played like a Shimakaze, but it is not a Shimakaze. They are very often pink after the end of the match. Can you get it? It's Yoshino.
I was gonna say it's either Zao or Yoshino, but
Every time you see a Yoshino, they are completely ignoring their amazing guns, which can Citadel Montanas at 18k and things like that, and just doing circles, doing the Venom thing with the torpedoes, and then getting one-shotted because they're broadside. And every time I see that, it just makes me just die a little bit inside. And so I just prefer it if that ship was just taken and put in on a shelf somewhere or just deleted, just so that I don't have to watch that happening. Because I really like that ship, but
yeah, I don't think we've had that
I
one.
don't like seeing it played.
I don't
like
think
that.
so either. I think Stats putting the Yoshino out to pasture, so to speak, is this is a first.
Yeah, it makes me sad.
Well, that's fascinating, Yoshino.
Use your guns, Yoshino people. Use your guns.
Use your
They're
guns.
good. Do
It's
it.
true. You don't have Deadeye. You can use your guns. It's fine. The Sub-Octavian sank the Kaba, and I constantly make reference to this just because it was just so baffling to me. But the other one that really got me was way back after the first season that had carriers. We did a little CV main roundtable where we had Warlord from 07 and Cable Guy from KSC and Oscons, and then also oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name. He's from
One of the Asian ones.
Rapoi
From
on the
Asia server.
Asian server. It was NMSL, CV NMSL. That's what it was. And he, here we were thinking, oh, this is gonna shine some light on the CV mains and make them appear a little more human, and it was the complete opposite. They showed just how spiteful they were, which is why they like CVs. And CV NMSL is like, why would I sink? What did he sink? He sank the. I think he sank the Hakuryu specifically
yes.
to show people it's not that CVs are too good, it's just that you're bad. And I was like, that is the most spiteful, malicious, malevolent answer we've ever had, and it's gorgeous. Your spite is gorgeous. So, Yoshino, that's a great answer.
Yoshino.
It's unique. I appreciate it. I think I remember what it was. The last thing I wanted to ask you, which was, shit, I just forgot it again. Dead air.
There's a squirrel outside of Bogsy's window.
There
Monkey dance.
is monkey dance. Oh, wait, did I get it? Damn it! No, I'm gonna remember as soon as we're off the air. Yeah.
This is what editing is for. Though.
Man. Well, Stats. So we're gonna include links to your YouTube, to your Twitch. Anything else you'd like, please mention it now, and then we'll include it down below in the description.
Yes, there are two things. One is as was mentioned right back at the beginning, is I also with Twitch partners Killerbin and Painzor, I also have a podcast. It is called Statsthonk. It's released once a fortnight, where we discuss, frankly, whatever it is that we find interesting that fortnight. We will be having guests occasionally, like we did with the King of the Sea guys. And you can find that at stats.podbean.com, or you can search for Statsthonk on any of the major podcasting platforms. It'll be on things like Amazon Music and Spotify and Google Podcasts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then also I'm doing specifically next Wednesday the 7th in the evening EU time. So I think this is starting, would it be 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. Central European summertime. We're doing a little tournament that's being done between the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force. So this is an official event for the British military. So they've got two teams. It's not a full tournament, it's just two teams having a show match. It's a best of 5. They are fighting, I forget the exact details, I think it's tier 8s. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's tier 8s. I think it's 5v5, 5 best of 5. It's going to be going on from 6 p.m. UK, 7 p.m. EU. On both of our channels we'll be co-casting it, so me and Flambass will be doing that together. So tune in. I guess for you guys in North America, it would be around about lunchtime on Wednesday if you're able to join us.
And that's that's next Wednesday?
The 7th.
Wednesday
yeah,
the
next week.
7th. Yeah.
Okay, April 7th, Wednesday. Great. Well, I'll put that down in the description below as well. And other than that, Stats, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that that we managed to get you over here to have a chat with us.
It's been a delight.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the next episode of Statsthonk. You guys are doing a great job, so keep it up.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. And as always, thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. So we'll catch you next time on Get to Know World of Warships.